So you have to be very respectful to both the speaker and the client. So I would try to give them 4 or 5 and say to them, listen, if we're on the right track with that, which usually we are, give me your first choice and your second choice in case your first choice isn't available, or in case your first choice doesn't think it's the right fit for them.
Hey there, it's James Taylor, and I'm delighted today to welcome onto the show Maria Franzoni. Maria Franzoni is the founder and CEO of Maria Franzoni Limited, a UK-based speaker and advisory bureau with a global reputation, working with some of the most renowned thinkers and practitioners in the world today. Maria and her team provide experts, speakers, and advisors to companies who want to inspire, educate, and entertain their people and clients and help them adapt to change. She is also the host of the Speaking Business podcast and co-chair of the European Association of Speaker Bureaus. It's my great pleasure to have Maria with us today. So welcome, Maria.
Thank you, James. Thank you for having me.
So share with our listeners what's happening in your world just now.
We're in silly season, actually. So this is high conference season. So lots of events going on, lots of people planning, lots of inquiries. So I'm pulling my hair out at the moment. So it's quite nice to take a step back and have a little chat with you.
Good. Well, thank you so much for coming on as well. So how did you get started in this business? You probably should explain. Obviously we have lots of listeners and attendees on that watch this podcast and listen to this show who are on the speaker side. They're maybe or just getting into speaking, but we also have a lot that are more on the client side who are booking speakers, bring speakers to talk at their events, their conferences. So let's explain the role that you have as a speaker bureau, where you sit in all this, and how did you get started into this business?
Okay, so 2 questions there. Let me start with how I got started. And actually, it was completely by accident. So certainly, many, many years ago when I was at school, nobody would have known what a speaker bureau was. I don't know if they even existed. And so I had a couple of careers before I went into this business. And the career more or less before that was I was a management consultant. So you know what management consultants are like. We think we know everything and we know the answers to everything. And we talk to anybody at their level, however senior they are. So I saw this cryptic advert that said if you can negotiate at senior level, or if you're not fazed by talking to very senior people. And I thought, well, I've been sitting in front of CEOs and telling them what's wrong with their business, so I can do that. I had no idea what it was about, but I knew I wanted to change. I wanted to do something different and wanted to stop traveling, actually, as well. And so I met this amazing guy who was running a fantastic bureau, who's the company's still one of my big competitors. And he explained the business of the Speaker Bureau, which is, in fact, a wonderful resource for clients who are looking for experts to go and assist them with their business. And it might be in the form of a speech at a conference. It might be to go and do some training. It might be to go and sit on an executive board. But it's basically bringing expertise from around the globe to your business to help you with whatever's going on in that business.
So there's someone that's organising whether it's an external facing conference or an internal client event or internal event themselves. That person that's organising that event, there's a lot of risk for them in terms of brand reputation. They'll probably have their C-suite there as well. How does working with a company like you, how does that help them decrease that risk?
Well, I suppose if you're going out on Google to find a speaker, it's very difficult because you have no sort of yardstick of how good they are, and you've got nothing to compare it to. By coming to a bureau, all of the people that we work with, we will either have seen them, they've been recommended, somebody in the bureau will have seen them, or they'll have been recommended by another client. They've gone through a bit of a process. It's not hugely difficult, but we are quite selective about who we have, so you don't have everybody on your books. So there's that part, but the other part is that we will have an understanding of what they can do and what they can't do. Many clients will come to you with a fixated idea of the kind of speaker they want, and it's only when they speak to a bureau that they think, well, actually, we can actually expand that and maybe look at a different profile or a different type of speaker. So all we do day in, day out is deal with speakers. So our knowledge is quite wide.
And when a client comes to you, do they ever come to you just saying, listen, I don't know really what we need, what we want. I know I've been asked to do this event. We've got my overall remit is to inspire people, let's say, but I have no idea where to go. Where does that conversation begin if a client comes to you like that?
We have a lot of that, actually, and more often than not, they think they know what they want, but they don't really know what they want because they can't articulate it. And I suppose you have to take a few steps back with that client and say, well, what are you trying to achieve? What is the objective that you've got here, either with the event or with the internal meeting or with the board meeting? What is the outcome you're looking for? And to really understand where are they at in their business? What are they dealing with? What are the problems? What are the issues? And understand also the level of the audience, because the audience will dictate a lot of the time where you can go with your speaker, because you have to really be either at that level or higher so that you're stretching that audience. So there's a lot of, we call it scoping, but there are a lot of questions you want to ask the client about what they're trying to achieve. You want to know what's happened in the past, what's worked for them in the past, what hasn't worked for them. But the really important one is, what's the outcome? What does success look like for you? What's going to make, if you're the organizer, what's going to make you look great in the board's eyes so that you've succeeded and your business succeeds and the audience succeeds? And you don't always get to have that conversation, and then that makes it difficult for you.
What about when you're contacted by, let's say it's the person who's been charged with doing this event, but they're not the end decision maker. They're not the person who'll make the final call and write the check. How do you deal with that? The difference between the consumer and the customer?
That happens a lot. And more often than not, there isn't one decision maker anyway. There's usually more than one. So you're not always dealing with all of the decision makers. So it depends how far down the line it's gone. I prefer it if somebody brings us in to a more senior level, because you can have a better discussion. But you start with where you're at, and you have to ask the questions of them. And they might need to go away and come back. And sometimes you're dealing with people who are very new to running events or new to booking speakers, and you have to educate them, and you have to teach them, and you have to help them.
What happens when you get the call happens, or you get the email that comes in saying, we're running this event and we want a celebrity. We want that high profile sports person or a politician, or we want Richard Branson. We want to do an event. We want people to be more entrepreneurial in our company. So we want to bring Richard Branson in. But they haven't quite got perhaps the Richard Branson budget for their event. Well, how do you steer that conversation?
That happens a lot as well, that people have got, I call it champagne taste and beer money, because I have that in my life. I am that person. And so first of all, you've got to understand, why do you want the celebrity? If they're wanting it for bums on seats to attract people, then they need to find the money if they want to do that, if that's what the purpose is. But if it's because they want the glitz and the glamour or whatever, again, it goes back to, what is it you want to achieve by having that person there? And there is only one Richard Branson for a start. So, and he's a busy man. So, you might have to sort of step them back and say, well, okay, let's see what realistically we can do and why you want a celebrity.
When a client comes to you and they have, okay, this is the event, this is the topic, this is the theme that we're wanting for this, are you normally coming in providing, is it one or two suggestions, or are you giving them maybe a little bit more than that, and then suggesting, like, go away, have a conversation, see which one you think, maybe there's one or two, and then we'll go in detail around those two?
Well, very good questions, James. It's like you've actually thought about this. This is really good.
I've been on both sides. It's fascinating having this great opportunity to have been on both sides of actually having booked speakers for events, and also obviously we work together, me as a speaker as well. So I'm always fascinated as much from the other side, from the person that's booking, as I am from the speaker side.
Yeah, I've forgotten the question.
So when you get that remit that comes in, and they're saying, okay, we know our theme. Our theme this year is on X topic. This is our budget, and it's an okay budget, and the event is happening in, let's say, in Berlin. Do you give them, like, maybe just one or two suggestions, like, okay, this is exactly the person that you should have for this, or do you give them maybe 5 or 6? And at what stage do you then really kind of go in depth on those, and especially on the content side of what they're going to be doing for the event?
Yeah, and it's still a great question. So it really depends in terms of timescale. So, occasionally you will have a client come to you with a really, really tight timescale, and therefore you can only recommend a couple because you have to check that they're available before you recommend them. Personally, I like to have a longer lead time so I can give people a selection. I like to give about 5, ideally, if I can. And at that point, I won't have gone to the speakers to talk to them about the event or to have check their availability, out of respect for the client. Because if the client doesn't like James Taylor that I put forward and says, actually, that is not the appropriate person. It's going to be very embarrassing if I've spoken to James and said, listen, James, I'm talking to you about this particular event, and they say, actually, you've gone the wrong way. It's not quite, now that we've thought about it and now that you've given us the answer, we want to rethink it. So you have to be very respectful to both the speaker and the client. So I would try to give them 4 or 5 and say to them, listen, if we're on the right track with that, which usually we are, give me your first choice and your second choice in case your first choice isn't available, or in case your first choice doesn't think it's the right fit for them, because sometimes there is a conflict of interest as well. And that, you might not want to work with a particular client because actually you're working with their competitor, and I might not have that information available to me. So I like to give 4 or 5. I think more than that can be too many, but there are some clients who want to have a whole load of ideas.
I was having a conversation the other week with someone very senior from the advertising industry in Spain. And we were talking about some of their clients, and they work with very large energy companies, oil companies. And they said, actually, it's a bit of a challenge now because some of our more millennial workers that are coming into the business say, we will not work. I do not want to work with that particular client. Even if it's, let's say, if it's a oil company and they're doing a wind, farm or something like that. They just say we want to. Do you ever find that is the equivalent with speakers? Some speakers will say, "Listen, I will not work with tobacco, or I will not work with certain types of companies."
Yeah, I have speakers who won't work with arms, obviously, tobacco, some gaming. Some people won't work with gaming companies, and you have to know about that. So yes, there are speakers who won't work with certain industries, and it's absolutely their prerogative.
And then when you get I'm interested because you've had for years and years, you've been getting all these briefs coming in daily, where people, they're doing their events. What themes, what topics have you noticed have become more in favor in recent years? You're getting asked for more and more. And what are those ones where, frankly, you're just not getting asked as much?
See, that's a good question. That's interesting. I suppose that there's one area that it has always been there and will always be there and will continue to be there, and that's anything to do with people. So people, leadership, motivation, team and all that kind of, that's always there. What's come up a lot more over the last decade has been certainly security, cyber, technology, AI. Futurists have become very hot in the last 10 years. And what have we lost? I'm trying to think. I'm not sure. Yeah, well, the millennium bug we don't talk about anymore.
Do you ever get clients that just still come to you with saying, we just want someone to motivate? It doesn't about the code, but we just want motivation. Because my understanding that was slightly started to fall out of favor. It wasn't being requested, certainly in North America, quite as much. What you find? Because I know a lot of your clients, obviously you have clients internationally, but you have a lot of clients based in Europe.
We do have that. You do get asked for motivational, but usually there's a topic, but we want somebody who's motivational as a speaker to talk on that topic.
Okay.
So it's slightly changed rather than somebody just come in and do the rah-rah. You do get people asking, we'd like them to be inspired, we'd like to be surprised, we'd like to be thinking out of the box, we want to have a different angle, etc.
So as you've been building, now you're in your own business, you've been building your own business. I'm interested, when you previously worked with these other companies, you were kind of going in there, you were like an employee, then you went very kind of senior in those organizations. How are things different now that you're the boss and it's your name that's on the front door?
I suppose I'm bossier than I used to be. Gosh, how's it changed? I chose to become my own boss because I wanted to sort of do things differently and change things and shake things up. And I think once you become your own boss, and I don't know if you found this too, but after you've been doing it for a while, you probably make yourself unemployable because you just want to do things your way and you want to have control. And I love that. I probably work harder now than I ever have done. And I feel in many ways, I feel very responsible for my team and the people who have come with me. So the staff that I have with me, I feel, they've taken a risk with me really, and they've all been with me for a very long time, and it's wonderful. And so I feel very maternal towards them and very nurturing. And that's a big responsibility, which you don't have if you're working for somebody else. They have that headache in a way, I suppose. So, but I don't think I could work with it for anybody else ever again, really, to be honest with you.
Was there something in particular when you decided to go out on your own that you said, I don't want to be doing this type of, in terms of how, maybe the usual way that speaker bureaus work. You know, I'm actually going to be against that. That's just not the way that I want to build a business. I want to build a slightly different. Was there anything you were kind of like fighting against that maybe is a current norm in this business?
Yeah, there's lots of things actually. That's really interesting. That's very perceptive. Yes, there is. And I was working within a bureau, and I have such a good relationship with that bureau. I still have a great relationship with that bureau. That bureau is the London Speaker Bureau. And so I wanted to do things differently, but I didn't want to break that relationship. So although I have my own bureau, Maria Franzoni Limited, I'm still part of that network. I'm part of we call them the elders. I'm one of the people that have been there the longest, and I'm involved, and I sort of work, if you like, as a non-exec, if you like, with them. And I've kept the relationship. But what I wanted to do, and I think it comes from having been a management consultant, I want to change things all the time. It drives my team nuts. But for me, nothing is ever quite right. You have to keep improving and changing it, and not change for the sake of change. But if I see something that can be done better or differently, that is a benefit then to the speaker or to the client, I want to be able to do that. And I got to the point with London Speaker Bureau that they got too big to be able to do that, to do it quickly. Because I'm not getting any younger. Now, if I was 20 years younger, I would be patient and say, okay, we can do it all together. But I thought, well, no, I want to do these things differently. And you're working with me now, and you know that we do several things that are quite different from other bureaus. And some of the things that I don't want to do that a lot of bureaus do, and not just bureaus, but a lot of businesses do, I don't want to do AdWords. I want to do word of mouth. I want people to come to mouth. I want speakers to recommend me. I want clients to recommend me. I don't want to be paying for adverts, because I think it's more about people coming to you because they've had a referral, because you've done a good business. I don't want to compete. So if a client comes to me and they've said, we've already gone to 2 other bureaus with this inquiry, my question to them is, well, why are you not allowing them to do that work? Why have you come to me too? What are they not doing for you? Oh, no, they're doing great. I just want to, I don't want to compete on price. I think that's incredibly unfair for my speakers. And it's incredibly unfair to the bureaus. If you've got 2 or 3 bureaus battling for one inquiry, for one booking, what are they doing? They're battling on price. And then I think that ruins the industry. I think that's really terrible. So I always step out and say, guys, you go stay with the first bureau. They will do a great job for you. Let them do that job for you. If they don't do a good job for you for whatever reason, then you come to me. But 9 times out of 10, they're not going to. And I hope other bureaus do the same. That kind of stuff, I don't want to be doing that. I think that's a waste of everybody's time, and it actually ruins the industry when you've got everybody fighting for one inquiry. That's crazy.
I guess from your perspective, it means that you're not, obviously you're getting inquiries in all the time, but they're not those inquiries which have a lower chance of going to completion or a lower chance to budget. You're building relationships with people over a longer period of time. They know you, they trust you, they trust your judgment on things. I'm wondering how if especially in the Europe case, it's starting to be affected by a conversation I had last week with another conference organizer in the Middle East. And I said, what are the trends that you're noticing? And one of the things he said, well, we're seeing a lot more internal events going on. And he was explaining to me one of the reasons was that because of anti-bribery and all kinds of things like that, companies they're deciding to really invest a lot more in their clients, their customers, their best customers, best partners, let's say. And they're doing a lot more internal events as well. So, so when you're working, I mean, are you finding that in Europe? Are you starting to see an increase in what we might class as kind of internal events as opposed to kind of outward public-facing events?
Do you know, the balance for us has always been more internal events than outward-facing public events. That's really interesting. And I don't know if that's because of how, the kind of speakers that we work with and the kind of clients that we attract, but it's been a bigger internal events, which for me are much more satisfying because you can really get into sort of what we were talking about earlier, understanding what's going on in the company, what they need, how we can help them. With an external event, it's these usually it's customers or prospects, and so the client isn't really interested so much in talking about what's going on in their particular business. They'll be talking about what's going on in their industry, and they want to be seen as leaders and they want to be innovative in that respect. But it's a much more difficult. It's a much more difficult brief in a way, and a much harder relationship because you're constantly just trying to raise the bar on the last event, and that's tough. That's really tough.
Now, if we flip it around slightly, I know we have a lot of people that listen and watch this who are either professional speakers or they're aspiring speakers. Maybe they're authors and they've got a new book coming out and they're looking to kind of get out and spread the word via keynotes and speaking. How do is there a stage in a speaker's career where it actually really makes sense to work with a bureau, and is there a stage it doesn't? That's my kind of first question. When do you know if it's right as a speaker to work with a bureau? And then the second question is, how do you like them to connect with you and reach out to you?
So I can't speak for all bureaus because they're all different, I suppose. But for me and the sort of my peers and sort of bureaus that I work with and know, we're not interested really in speakers that are just starting out, unless that speaker has done something amazing. So we tend to work mainly with experts or people who have another job, if you like. So as you mentioned, sports people. So if you just want to, 4 Olympic golds. Then, and you may not have spoken before, that kind of person, yes, we are interested because that person has a level of profile. But if you're somebody who's coming on to speaker circuit as a speaker and you're just starting out and you're expecting a bureau to get you gigs and to market you, that's not what we're about. We're really, although we're called a speaker bureau, I suppose we're a client bureau. We're reacting to clients' inquiries and we're responding to what their needs are. So we tend to go out and reach out for speakers if we've got a gap. The best way for me to take on a speaker is a speaker that has been recommended by another client, because that tells me that somebody else has paid money for this person and they're very good. Or if I see them, I mean, when I met you, I saw you and I thought, oh, God, I love this. This is different. This is unique. I've never seen this approach taken. And immediately I wanted to connect with you. I mean, that for me is great because then I've seen you and I love it and I'm enthusiastic about it and it resonated and I immediately think, this could go somewhere. So that's the best way. The kinds of speakers I particularly like are those who are too busy to deal with their speaking business.
Yeah.
That they have a full-time job or they have another, they're busy doing their stuff, or they're busy out there speaking or busy out there consulting or busy out there being a futurist or being an economist or being a neuroscientist or whatever it is that they do. And they just don't want to be dealing with the business part of the speaking. And it's like, Maria, please handle it. Please deal with the client. Please find out if it's a real inquiry. Find out if it's appropriate for me, if I can add value to it. And if I can add value, can they compensate me appropriately, and then make it happen, do the contract, do the negotiation, get the money and deal with it all for me. That's the best kind of speaker for me, because then I'm helping them. They can carry on with what they need to do and I'm doing the bit that I know how to do. Now,
when we met before, you spoke very passionately about the role of video for speakers. About the rise of video and how you're just every client you have such a short period of time in order to make that connection with the viewer, and your video is being watched by multiple people in a room. What are let's talk about the common mistakes that you see. I normally don't like to go negative on things, but let's just see if we can rid the world of some common mistakes in speaker videos. The world might be a better place. What are maybe the common mistakes that you see? And what are the things that you're seeing amongst the people who are doing video very well as speakers, and clients are reacting very well to those videos?
I suppose the common mistake is poor quality, and you've got to remember that somebody's watching it on their computer or on their mobile, and they need to be able to hear you properly. And if they can't hear you and see you properly, there's just no point. Just don't bother having it. You just don't do it. So quality is a common mistake, and often people will take video from an event and they are desperate to show how big the audience is. And so you've got a camera placed right at the back and there's a tiny little person at the front on the stage. And when I'm watching it on screen, I can't connect with you. And yes, you've got a huge audience, but is that going to impress me as a booker or not? Probably not, because I don't know whether you've paid to be on that stage. I don't know whether you're doing that gig for free. I have no understanding of why there is such a huge audience, or whether you've been invited to speak there. So there's no context. And if half of the people in the audience are, reading what's next on the agenda, or looking at their mobile phones, or tweeting and not paying attention, that doesn't do you any good either. So that's a huge mistake. Everybody's obsessed with the size of the audience. I think it's more important for you to speak to really senior audiences rather than very big audiences, because those people in that big audience could all be people just brought in off the street.
Yeah.
And then no disrespect to them, but they might not be the kind of clients I'm going to. So that's one of the mistakes that I could go on all day about mistakes. Let's focus on the positives. So things that people do right. If you can do a show reel, that's a really good idea. And the reason, and yes, you should have longer videos too for when a client wants to go much more in depth. But because most clients have to have a choice and have to give a choice, and even the feeling of choice, if you've got a short show reel of around 3-4 minutes or less, and I've got 5 speakers and I've got 5 of those reels, I can watch 5 of those reels. Now, if I've got 3 speakers with reels and then 2 speakers, one with an hour speech and one with a 20-minute speech, it's probably going to be easier for me to get a better feel. And on a reel, you're going to show your highlights. You're going to present yourself as you want to present yourself to potential clients. So that's really good. And for me, the best show reels are the ones that stand alone. So if I watch your show reel, I know everything I need to know about you to make a decision. I don't need to look at anything else. Now, if that video does that, that is a brilliant reel. Very few people get that right.
I saw one you showed before. It's one of your speakers, and I've forgotten her name now. She was the founder of one of the big coffee companies.
Coffee Republic.
Republic, yeah. And you showed me one of her videos, and obviously some of the videos are a little bit old. Some of the actual footage itself is very old. But the thing you got overwhelmingly watching that video was how passionate she was, what expert she was in her topic. And even though it wasn't like, I think it was like cut into segments, there was music kind of sitting as a sound bed underneath. At the end of it, there was a feeling that you were left with, like, okay, this person is like, not only do they know what they're doing, but they're going to inspire my audience, they're going to educate my audience as well. And I thought that was a great show reel, that one.
Yeah, it is. And in fact, actually, this was an event where I was asked to deconstruct a reel and say what needs to be in it and show an example of a good one. And it was the only one I could show, which was really sad. We've since gone on to make some reels for some speakers. So we've done it and we've used the template that I think is the perfect template. What you're left with, you know exactly who she is, what she can bring to the table. You know her credentials. She's introduced by a third party, which I always love. I prefer it when somebody else introduces you in a reel rather than you saying, I am. I think it's much stronger to have somebody else saying who you are. And you come away, and also the music is her personality. The music she had really shows her personality. So you come away thinking, gosh, she's great. That reel is 15 years old, 14, 15 years old, and it still gets her bookings.
And it's fascinating. There's that Maya Angelou quote, which it says something like, people will forget what you say and the facts, numbers you share, but they shouldn't remember they shouldn't forget how you make them feel. And I can still feel that sensation now seeing that video, and that was a few months ago, having seen that video. So that's gonna sit in the back of my mind if I'm thinking about I'm being asked by a client, can you recommend someone that could speak about entrepreneurship? Next year, women speaker could speak about entrepreneurship. Like, that's sitting right at the back of my head to kind of refer that speaker as well. As you built your career, was there a key aha or a light bulb moment, a time when you went, okay, this is the direction I want to go with the work that I do. This is where I think I can make a difference in the world.
Yes, actually, that's really interesting. In fact, for me, I've always had this thing about connecting people who are very diverse and who perhaps would never meet. So as when I was younger, I used to always put friends together who never would have met, and perhaps, and I still do it and I still mix it up. And so when I first got into the speaker, I can do this, connect speakers that perhaps clients would never have thought of booking, and I can do that. And now it's gone further than that. It's gone a lot further than that. Now it's sort of actually not only in doing that, there's that initial element, but actually I can change stuff. I can make a change, and I can change the way people think and feel and act by putting speakers into their business. And in the same way, now I'm also doing a lot of work with speakers where I'm doing training with speakers. I can change how they can make other people think and feel and act by helping them to get their messaging right and help them with their speaking business. So it's all been, it's really, I'm in a really good place. It's finally all come together. Oh, it's like, That makes sense.
As you mentioned, I'm thinking of a mutual friend that we have, and I know he's also one of your fellow speakers as well, Frederick Haran, who's a great speaker and is a good friend of ours. And I remember Frederick saying he really wants to, he has a real passion to help other speakers as well, because I think if I can influence them and if I can influence those 1,000 speakers, and each of those 1,000 speakers is speaking 100 times a year to rooms of 500 people, there's a huge leverage that you get from that, from being able to take like even just one core idea, or something good that you want to put out into the world. It can reverberate through other people, and they can almost act as your kind of your voice and on stages that you can't be on.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. So yeah, so suddenly it makes sense, and then it becomes really satisfying, especially when you get feedback then from a client that, you know, you get some amazing emails to speakers thanking them and saying how it's changed them and moved them and what they're going to do differently next. And that's wonderful. That's the best piece, really.
So as we start to finish up here, some quick fire questions. I would love to know, are there any tools or apps, things that you find very useful in running your business?
I use Dropbox a lot. I find that fantastic. We also use Salesforce to manage our relationships. And what else? I suppose those are the two main ones. I would say, yes.
And this will be a difficult question for you, because you represent lots of speakers who are also great authors, so you're probably reading all the time, getting those ideas. But if you were to recommend one book to our audience, it could be a book on speaking, or it could be just a book on a topic that you're really interested in just now. What would that book be?
Yeah, I'm going to get into trouble now, because I'm going to. You're going to see now. You're going to get me into a lot of trouble. Probably the book I would recommend is a book called Deviate, and it's by a neuroscientist called Bo Lotto. But once you've read it, you will know less than you did before you read it, because he really makes you rethink how you perceive everything. And I mean, every time I talk to him, he absolutely blows my mind. He's an expert in perception, and he explains why you perceive things in the way you do. And if you can ask different questions, you can change everything. It's just brilliant.
Fantastic. We'll put that down here in the show notes. We'll put that link here, so everyone, people just go to jamestaylor.me, just type in Maria Franzoni, and you're going to find all these links that we're talking about here as well. What about an album or a record? Is there one album or record that you love more than any other?
Oh my God, that's such a difficult question. I'll tell you what, I'm gonna name a band at the moment rather than an album, because I've just been to see them and they blew me away. They were so good, and they've got a new frontman now. And I went to see Spandau Ballet, which will tell you my age as well. And I saw them recently at the Apollo, and they were so good. They've got a new frontman, a guy called Ross, and I can't remember his surname, who had to step in the shoes of Tony Hadley, and he was phenomenal. And it was one of the best concerts I've been to. I loved it. So I'm not going to give you an album, I'm going to give you a band, a whole band.
And I didn't even realize they had a new frontman. So that's definitely news to me as well. I want you to imagine for a second that you woke up tomorrow morning and you have to start from scratch. So you have all the knowledge, all the skills you've acquired over the years, but no one knows you. You know no one. You have no contacts. What would you do? How would you restart?
I know nobody and I have no contacts. Oh my goodness. I probably would try to, I'll do a lot of research, I think. I'd do a load of research to find out, about the industry, about the business, about other players. And I'd start networking my little socks off, I think. I like to meet people.
And if people want to talk about meeting, if people want to connect with you, reach out to you, maybe they have an event coming up and they're looking for a speaker, or maybe they're a speaker and they want to reach out and connect that way. Where's the best place for them to go and do that?
LinkedIn or Facebook are probably the two best places, and we can put links in your notes.
That's great, and we'll put all the links also to Maria's website for the bureau here as well. Maria, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm really looking forward to you and I working together, obviously, and seeing your business go from strength to strength.
Thank you, James. Thank you.
How would you like to get paid to travel the world to share your message and expertise? How would it feel to get paid $5,000, $10,000, or $25,000 to travel first class and stay in 5-star hotels in exotic locations. What I've just described is the lifestyle of international keynote speakers. And you can join me and over 100 of the world's best keynote speakers and speaker trainers as they reveal their secrets to becoming a better speaker and getting booked to travel the world as a professional keynote speaker. And best of all, as it's an online summit, you don't even have to leave home. Plus, it's not going to cost you a single dollar, euro, pound, ruble, peso, or yen if you sign up for the free pass at internationalspeakersummit.com. You're going to receive access to never seen before video interviews with over 40 of the world's best keynote speakers. In addition to this, you'll get access to archive interviews from some of last year's summit guests. So in total, you'll be able to watch in-depth interviews with over 100 incredible speakers and speaker trainers. You'll learn how to find a theme for your keynote presentation, how to craft your talk, how to get booked as a speaker, how much to charge, and ways to get paid to speak on stages all over the world. So what are you waiting for? Head over to internationalspeakerssummit.com now.